Welcome back, everyone, and here we are, as promised, the follow-up to the prior video about uranium. And this one is more so about how far we've come, really, and how, well, there's a few things to get bullish about. And so that's what's in today's video. So I ended the prior video talking about restocking and how restocking was really a big deal, and how at this point it looks like we're heading for at least some level of restocking. Well, we all know there's some ready supply and some ready supply that needs higher prices. This shouldn't be surprising to anyone, and the care and maintenance also need higher prices, and they're ready. So you can get to 100% of demand, provided there's no unexpected issues with some of the expected things. However, getting beyond 100%, so if the utilities really wanted to restock, you could do it a little bit. But if they wanted to restock a lot, it quickly becomes a question of, well, can they right away, or will they have to wait, or will they want to wait, or what if there's some interruption? Because everything has a price and a time delay. So if you wanted to have enough uranium to balance the market, well, there's a certain price, certain time delay, and you could probably do it. If you wanted to have a small restocking, there is a price, and there is a time delay, and there is a probably enough extra uranium as long as a few things fall into place, some mines get built, and some there's no big interruption. So you could do a small restocking. It would mean the price goes higher, but then you get to a large or a desperate restocking cycle, and I don't think we're definitely not definitely there yet. But if they wanted to have a large, like a lot of utilities wanted to restock at the same time and they wanted to do it through contracts, well, then there's some questions, because if they wanted to restock, let's call it 10% per year restocking, there's some questions there because it's unclear where some of those pounds might be found. Now, maybe some will be found in the spot market. Maybe there's sources, but it really becomes questionable if there's a wave of people that want to do it at the same time. And let's say there's a large restocking cycle, that means the price is probably going higher. Now, then you must consider that what if there's a large restocking cycle in a market where there's really not really pounds floating around because it's taken so long of deficits and it's kind of been drained out, and the market's opaque, and there's not really that many ready producers, and some ready producers see the desperation. Well, then that could really delay the starting, because if they're like, no, okay, well, you could have given 75 bucks maybe, or what, 60 bucks or whatever the price is a, a year ago, 2 years ago, but now we want more. And so that delays the startup because of negotiation, gets extended, and that kind of creates even more of an issue. And then you have to think, okay, well, what if the market sees that someone is really wanting to restock some inventories? And then you have something that I'll call investor interference, where basically some investors are like, oh, well, you can pay whatever you can afford to pay much more, so we're going to buy it up and you're going to buy from us much higher. Well, remember how I said depleted market? Well, what if the people that are trying to front run can't really are driving up the price trying to find pounds? Well, then you have a whole different ball game. And in that scenario, I really don't know what the price should be or would go to, because there's extra uranium if the price is higher, but there's very far from an infinite amount of ready uranium. And the other thing that investors could do is you could see, well, I mean, you could see, this is an investor, but you could see disruption in the market. You could see funds buying more physical pounds because remember, if yellow cake starts trading at a premium, well, it makes sense for them to just buy up uranium. Same thing with Uranium Participation Corp. As soon as they're trading at a premium to NAV, it makes sense. It is smart for them to sell shares and buy uranium because it's better for the shareholders and better for the company. So if that starts happening, then you kind of have investorference. Now, I just mentioned the physical funds, and I think this is a very valid point. Right now, what does the market think is going on? And I think the best way that you could see what it thinks is in these funds because they're mostly trading at a discount to their net asset value, which means the funds think, the market thinks, if you will, that the price of uranium is actually going lower. And if the market keeps thinking that, if the funds keep pricing that, well, then they're probably going to see some outflows of the funds. So they're going to be selling uranium, buying back shares because that makes sense for them. It's not dumb. It enhances their shareholder value. You get more uranium per share. Now, if they keep being bearish all the way up, then don't expect them to be buying more uranium because it doesn't make sense. But if that flips, then we can see more inflows into the fund. And if that flips at the wrong time or the right time, depending on how you're looking at it, it could make things, well, it could be added demand in the market or it could be added supply. We'll have to watch that. Now, is the market thinking? This is a point that I wanted to make with regards to Kazatomprom. Kazatomprom announced that they are going to be down for one more month. And the market was thinking that the price was going to be lower because my guess is, I don't know, I haven't spoken with the market recently, but it seems to be saying that, well, once the supply comes back, the price is going to go down. Now, while I don't really fully agree with that, I think that I'm questioning what will change in the market's view if, well, because Kazakhstan said one more month. Will that really change the thinking of the market thinking, well, once it's back, whether it's back now or in one more month, I don't know how much it is going to change. The other point that I wanted to make, and it's a bit of a counterpoint to the point that I just made, is that when Kazatomprom announced their extension for the cut, they didn't cut this year's guidance. So is ISR or ISL as they call it, is it magic that you just invest once and you just, doesn't matter if there's any disruption, all disruption, treated the same size, doesn't matter, production continues? Probably not. I think that we are, even if we don't see more disruption from the lack of work or lack of investment in 2020, what follows 2020 is 2021. And I do think that if we don't see an impact this year, I think we'll see next. And I don't think it's that, well, if the country produces 60 million pounds a year and they shut down operations for a third of the year and they lose 1/6 of the year's worth of production once, I don't think that that's how it works. And I think we'll be seeing that later, maybe some more this year, but I don't think that we've seen the last of the impact there. And they also said, big point, it wasn't 1 month and then boom, full production. They said 1 month and then I forget what they said. It was a gradual, it amounted to a gradual restart if it makes sense after. So it wasn't 1 month, then boom, full production. So that is another thing to keep an eye on. I don't think we've seen the last of the cuts to what was thought to be guidance. So in a few months from now, inventories around the globe of uranium will reach a point that I consider, well, I used this point for my numbers to consider it critical. Now, does critical mean that it's gonna rocket up tomorrow because, oh my God, we suddenly have no uranium? No. Does it mean that it's gonna kind of kick the behind of some of the people and be like, okay, well, then we should really get this rolling? Yeah, probably. Um, but again, this is an arbitrary number that I'm using. This is not a suddenly everyone realizes all together the same thing. No, not even close. This is me looking at me putting a number because I needed some number in my model, and it's that number. And at this point, looking out a few months, I don't think much is going to change. I mean, in this world, that's a tough asks, but I believe that we basically inevitably get to that point, and I think we get to that point this year. Now, that's not why I'm saying I still think it's a few months, but it is a contributing factor. Now, past that point, that's the point where I believe that we likely, more and more likely, see restocking. Restocking, I spoke about that in the last video, today's video. It's very important. And not only that, but I believe that once you look at, so I've said this year, in a few months, I think the inventories reach the critical level. Well, are they suddenly going to restock next year? No, 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 no. I think that next year we will see another big deficit, probably a big drawdown in inventory. Why? Well, Ranger shuts down, Common shuts down. Remember all this Kazakh magical not doing any work and getting pretty much full production? I don't think that that's going to continue next year if it's not seen this year. So that's another thing. Oh, and I don't think McArthur River is going to be back probably at all next year, but definitely for most of next year. So 2021, we could see 25, we could see 30 million pound deficit. I don't know exactly, but it's too soon to say, but that's just some idea, and it's not a surplus. So I'm just saying, if the numbers get to my magical critical point this year, and if my magical critical point is somewhat accurate, then next year we could see the 25, 30. Let's call it 25, and then let's say we get to -3 this year. We could be at a point by the end of next year where utilities might want to restock 30 million pounds. And so they'll have to find that later. I want to be clear. This market is complicated and hard to pin down every source of supply and all the pounds in the market, because there's a lot of different sources and some that barely any people talk about, and there's some people restocking, some people destocking. It's very complicated to track everything. So I've been mainly working at this through a pounds accounting view, if you will. That said, if the market's in deficit, and again, this is all if my view is approximately more or less accurate. But as this takes longer, as things get, as the utilities find the pounds that have been there over the years, we don't know exactly where they are. We know they are, but as that gets removed, as that gets drawn down, as inventories get drawn down, there's less wiggle room for things to go wrong later. Nothing is certain in any market, but this is creating a more and more likely scenario for things to go more on the scale of very right later, as opposed to, well, that was okay. I mean, I guess that's fine. Everything's balanced. It's more likely like, whoa, wow, where did that come from? That's where that's a general direction that we're moving. So as I alluded to in the end of the prior video, I'm not really expecting a big move from the any Kazakh extension announcement. And that's not just because they didn't cut the guidance. It's not just because it won't only be really felt next year. Well, actually, I mean, there's partially that, but partially is that it's only going to be felt later. The other part is this market is showing you, or likes to show, that it will only really move if there is a bid, or if, well, if someone hits the ask or someone hits the bid. It doesn't like to try and predict things. It um, doesn't run up because it thinks the price will be, or there's going to be a higher payer later. It doesn't really run down because it thinks supply is coming back. It really looks like it wants to be slapped in the face to see that there's a hand in front of it. And if that is indeed the case to half the extent that I think it is, it's probably going to be pretty bullish at some point. Now, what this means is that unless there's demand in the market, the price isn't going to change unless there's supply or demand pushing in one direction, not going to change, which is why you can kind of see, like, over the past few months, or not even, like, even before that, wow, how time has flown. When everything was going down, when copper was tanking, zinc, oil, everything, when everything was falling apart, uranium didn't care. Why? Because there was nothing, there was no supply being dumped on the market. There was no rush for demand for a while. I mean, there was some demand later when there was announcements, because buying season announcements, people started forward looking. But it'll, another thing this means is that news doesn't matter until it hits the market. And you can see this every time past 3 years, almost, I don't know how long it's been. Every time there's good news in uranium, the stocks sell off. Why? Because stocks are like, oh, sell the news, and the price, there's no response in the price because the news isn't today. The news is not, I'm buying pounds today most of the time. The news doesn't hit the market, so it doesn't matter that the market doesn't see. And the last thing that this means is that the market is slower to react than it should be. So if the market was trying to look ahead and trying to predict things because, oh, this is coming down the pipeline, no, it's not really going to do that because it doesn't need to, because a lot of the market feels, well, the utilities, maybe they feel like, okay, they have inventory, so worst case, they're covered. But it means that things will get further down the line than they maybe should have. And maybe they're already further down the line than they maybe should have been. We'll see. So, in conclusion, near term, weak seasonality, and there's still a few months before the inventory number goes critical. That's still a few months away. Large deficits in 2021, next year, are basically should be baked in at this point. They should be baked in. The market should be looking at it. I don't know how much it is. I really am, because that's basically almost unavoidable at this time that we'll have a large deficit. Drawdowns past the critical point in inventory are at this point highly likely, and at this point, well, pretty bullish. There's a lot of short-term uncertainty, more of that on the supply side than the demand side, but a lot of how the effects of what's going on is going to get into the market. There's a lot of questions with there. But again, we are at a point where give me more time, please. Not just to buy, and I have been buying recently. I don't really talk much about what I've been doing day to day, but I have been buying recently. But I'm really hoping for more time because we're running out of time, and it at past the point of critical past the critical point, things get bullish at a faster pace. And as I've always said on the shutdown, I've spoken to a few people about it. The first 3 months of the Kazakh shutdown, particularly, are really bullish because are bullish because they bring forward the time where we flip to the critical point, which we're probably going to be passing even if there wasn't the shutdown. But a continuation is extra bullish, super bullish, that I've said to a number of people, past a certain point, because you get to the point where that means pounds that are going to have to be probably be restocked later, and those pounds are harder to come by than the ones that may still be in the market before we got through all the inventory that we needed to get through. So that is what I'm seeing in the uranium market. Thanks for watching, everyone. I really hope you enjoyed this video. And I did also want to say, in addition to my whole ramble about do your own research and not investment advice, is that a few of you have sent me messages in various forms, very kind messages, asking me where I was, um, what I've been up to. But anyway, I'm back, and I really wanted to say that I do appreciate what a few of you have said in the messages. And going forward, I'm going to try to come up with some interesting topics and some updates on topics that I've already discussed to keep more active here because I was away for a while and I apologize for that because it's busy, but really appreciate what you've said. So thanks.